Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th man, and probably Arwin trying to join during my introduction. Of course it is. And a whole bunch of people in Discord. So, welcome, one and all.
Good morning.
Adam Meakin.
Good morning.
Oh, sorry, Adam.
I could say the Snup say afternoon as well, yeah. Afternoon.
Hey, hello. Afternoon.
My bad. I have to try and remember because I've got studio lights on when I do the intro because I'm on camera and I can't see what I'm reading until I turn the lights off, which is after I'm on camera, and I'm reading your names off before I'm off camera. So I'm not reading them, I'm memorising them. So that's why. Anyway, we're joined by, drum roll please, the Adam Meakin.
Oh, drum rolling myself there, sorry. Ego.
Excellent. I enjoyed your memes greatly. Graphic though they were. What was the movie from? Was it Thelma and Louise?
No, it was. I did that after I couldn't remember the name of the film. The Accused, wasn't it?
The Accused. Okay. There's a fairly graphic, I won't use the word, scene in that particular movie. And what Adam had gone to the loving trouble of doing was pasting Ranty's face onto a particular scene with Ruhif involved in the scene and Fight the Flat Earth standing next to what was occurring in the scene, laughing his head off, and a few background watchers that included cats and I can't remember who else. But nevertheless, it was very amusing. Thank you for that, Adam.
Yeah, not so much for the public. The other one I thought was very good, but I think me and John D had a race for that meme. I thought you'd like that one more, the Matrix quote.
Which Matrix quote?
Shall I share it? As we're, instead of being
I was
mean.
just about to bring it up on Skype, but if you want to share it, saves me the trouble. We will get to housekeeping, by the way, folks in the audience, I promise.
Nathan, it's just there.
Just a few amusing memes that have been finding their way around the circuit, I should say. Okay, you're up.
Yeah. It was just the relevance of that one. We'd always thought of the cipher stuff. We've discussed it ourselves, but yeah, just to quote it. So, I know the ball doesn't exist. I know that when cash goes into my pocket, the ballers are telling me it's juicy and delicious. After 5 years, you know what I realise? Ignorance is bliss.
Nice.
Very good. Ranty memes. Very amusing. Let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That's a horizon formerly known as Earth curvature.
It will live forever in the math.
Anything beyond the math? Any real Earth curve? Experienceable, measurable, testable?
Well, how could there be when Rumpus says it only exists in the math?
Indeed. And so brings a conclusion to the first housekeeping question and also the globe Earth. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Not from Nottingham.
There is a public chant today, so if you do want to join and chat away, feel free to open up the live chat button on your live stream, and you can actually chat as a member of the public today. It's normally members only, but not today, so chant away. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No, no
over
distance.
Go
No
on,
distance
Hap.
measurement without the R.
Go on, Harp, try once more.
I was talking to a guy the other day. He came over. I was fishing. And I started talking about flat Earth to him. So the one question was, I said, "Do you believe that the sun is 93 million miles away?" And he looked at me funny, and the sun was right there. So I said, "Isn't it kind of like right there?" And he looked over and says, "Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?" And I said, "And how about the rays that are divergent? They're supposed to be parallel." He says, "Yeah, it's because we get these divergent rays all the time when I go fishing. It's awesome." And so he's looking, and yeah, it does seem to be kind of right there, doesn't it? So that's where it is, right there. Not 93 million miles away.
How vague can you be as a positive assertion? Right there. Where's there?
That's right there. Just
Come on,
right there.
Nathan,
You can
just-
almost touch it.
Profound. Thank you.
Right
Although you are
there
right
in
too.
view.
It's
Nathan,
one of the
it's
most
just-
wondrous. Go on, Alwyn. Go ahead.
Just gonna say, yeah, it's right over there in your view. That's the only place you can actually claim it is.
It's just
Should have told him under the firmament.
It is. What's
Yes.
it?
Inside the firmament, Neil.
Oh God! Don't start
It's
that.
in the firmament. Yeah, it's in the
Hey,
firmament.
I'm trying to
Tent
say
is trying to
something.
get a word in.
Content.
It's just a conversation by two fishermen. It's a light conversation. Let it be.
Okay. Thank you. Just fishing for compliments now. Anyway, so the ideas that you've put into the guy's head are perfectly valid, and it's one of the most wondrous things ever. Same goes for the sky itself. I've no idea what it is. I've no idea what the sun is, the stars, the moon, none of it. Right? That's a beautiful thing to appreciate as an adult. There's very few things back in the Matrix that were left with any wonderment attached to them. Now I have it all the time. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, for a lot of our opponents, it's not a wonderful thing. It's terrifying. Not knowing is the most scary thing ever. It'll keep them up at night. For me, I'm like, why is the sky blue? How far is the sun? What is the sun? What is the moon? A guy came on yesterday. What's an eclipse? What's happening when you reach totality? I don't know. It's amazing though, isn't it? What a world. Definitely not a heliocentric model with us moving around it. Definitely not us getting in between it and the moon, or the moon between us and it. Those things just simply don't happen. Those are based on orbital mechanics which have been debunked. So no, you don't live on a sphere moving around the sun, a la the heliocentric model that is asserted to be our world. It isn't. Cool. For me, not maybe for you. If you're watching, you might be one of the people that just finds that terrifying. Oh well. Some people are hopelessly dependent on the system, as Morpheus told Neo. And you're one of them. You'll fight against anybody that tries to challenge what is your world. Oh well. I'm quite happy. Never mind. Any evidence of our Earth radius?
No,
But there's a picture with
Same
some
thing.
missing pixels, which might suggest it.
no, they'll just have to assume it like always.
Have you heard about the grand solar minimum?
What?
The
Grand
grand
solar
solar minimum that's supposed to happen? The sun's supposed to scorch the earth. Guy was saying it takes 8 minutes for the light of the sun to reach us.
What?
You trying to tell us we've only got 8 minutes left, Neil?
I think that's what he was saying. I mean, he was saying that they're talking
that-
about the grand solar minimum going to happen soon.
Yeah. There's lots of
think
Grand solar minimum
the
is.
presupposition of an actual distance to the sun.
Hold on, Arwin. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say the grand. As far as I knew, the grand solar minimum it started already a couple years ago, and it's just like the sun's time of less activity, and it's supposed to last for another 10 years or so, or something like that. I don't know.
This is based on observations of sunspots and the like, though, is it not?
I think so.
So they decide that there's a high activity of the ball of gas in the sky 93 million miles away called the sun in the heliocentric model, and that activity based on the number or frequency of sunspots increasing or decreasing will dictate where their ball of gas in a sky vacuum has a increase or decrease, right? According to them.
Yeah. According to
Nathan,
them.
be afraid.
Exactly, Neil. You took the words out of my mouth. Don't be afraid, actually. Be very, very afraid.
So they're saying gas in the shape of a ball next to the vastness of the great vacuum.
Yeah, their sun, yeah. Helios. The thing at the centre of their world, yeah. Bow to
Hold
the
on.
sun,
Here's what drives me crazy about it, though. It's a Christian guy saying what the Bible says about it. The Bible says nothing about a grand solar minimum.
Okay. Maybe it's there in
Is
allegory.
that when our skin's going to get scorched? Is that when the sun's going to scorch men's skin? You talking about Revelation? Brought this up
He says
before.
the Bible speaks about it.
No, that's that. He can't refer to that. That's the final judgment. He's saying it's already started. It's going to go on for 10 years.
Well, no, it's in those days, like these days we're in now, the sun will scorch men's skin. Like, so it's actually starting to do that, if you've noticed.
No, that's the
hot.
judgment. Tenth is right. That's the end.
No. In those days, yeah, is it? I could be wrong. All right, I'm just going to stop.
Okay, let's not discuss prophecy.
Yes. So
Any
the curve
evidence?
of the earth also came up in that whole fishing discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked him if he'd ever seen curved water. And he said, well, the earth is real, and I knew where he was going. I was like, no, it's not. It's not that big. And have you ever seen any kind of water curving? I said, you tilt to any kind of container, the water stays level. He says, yeah, you're right. He pretty much, it took me about 10 minutes to make him understand that we're not spinning around, flying through an infinite vacuum of space. And he took it home with him and he said, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna look into this.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's a good feeling when you get someone just to open their mind a little bit. My sister recently came out of the flat earth closet.
Awesome.
Yeah, I fear ruining their
Yeah,
day. I picture the people as being, as I alluded to earlier with the Matrix reference, the people who are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they'll fight to defend it. Well, I see most people as that person. They don't want to be taken out of the system that they've become accustomed to, and they know what's what in that system. If you take them out of that paradigm, they get very scared, and they'll defend themselves against what they fear, which in that instance is you. So, from experience, for me, not so much.
Yeah, I experienced exactly that yesterday with my mother.
My son's 18. I think you hit it right in the head, Nathan. Maybe he's dependent on the system, but he's a scutch. I mean, we're driving and you look out the window and there's this guy. This is a while ago. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was something wrong with the guy, but one of those guys that's overweight, hair all a mess, and they got their pants up to their neck. So I noticed everybody looking at the guy at the same time, and my 18-year-old says, one of Dad's flat earther friends, and I wanted to kill him. He's a scutch, but I think he's dependent on the system.
Yeah, I get that frequently from what you tell me about your son. He sends it into personal attacks about the people. But by the same token, Neil, with your son specifically, does he work?
He goes to school. Well,
he's still at school. Okay, that's okay. Does he treat women well?
Yeah, I guess.
Is he in
Yeah,
trouble?
I mean,
Is he in,
he doesn't have a girlfriend.
is he in any trouble with the law?
No, no, no.
Then who
He's a
cares?
homebody.
Just be grateful for small mercies. Don't worry about his
Yeah, no,
religious
no.
outlook.
Listen. I agree. I'm glad, but sometimes he can be a scutch.
Yeah,
When
but the same,
you know,
right.
when he says that, everybody here is stupid. I know he's being an idiot. He can't believe that. He spoke to a few years one-on-one. He spoke to Tent. He spoke to you. He spoke to QE. So I think he's afraid. I think it's a fear in him.
Well, he's very orientated around society and what they make of him at 18. That's going to be his most important aspect
Yeah.
of his life. So socially, anything that make in any way suggests that it might lead to being a social pariah, he's going to avoid like the plague and ridicule. And that's what he's been trained to do as a youth, especially at an early age in regards to this subject. So he's just doing what society says is the right thing to do. But as I say, Neil, be grateful for small mercies. If he was a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm not looking at any Jehovah's Witnesses out there, former or current, but if he'd have gone and joined something that you potentially disapproved of, for whatever reason you may disapprove of Jehovah's Witnesses for, then you wouldn't hold that against him indefinitely if he was just a good citizen, treated women well, wasn't in trouble with the law, was working or in school. You know, those are the things that you hope for, as opposed to a criminal that treats women like dirt and isn't working. You know, that's what you could have on your hands and you don't. So be grateful for small mercies is my attitude.
Yeah,
that
but he
brings
is a
up
heliocentrist.
that
Well,
brings
then
up a
burn him at the
question.
stake.
That brings up a good question here, or observation.
What's a scutch?
As when you grow up and you notice the people around you in school, you notice the ones that bow to the system, and then you notice the ones on the other end that are the rebels. They're always getting in trouble because they don't like the system, and then everyone in between, the full rebel, that's kind of wild, but to the one who doesn't even buck the system. And I've always been a person with lots of questions. And every time I ask a question, it causes a behavior on the person. If they know and are familiar with the question and they have a pat answer, it just comes flowing off their lips. And then that descends to a supportive question for that answer that was given for the first one. And you just keep going and going and going just to test and see if that person really is parroting something that they heard and just giving that to you as an answer, or they've actually understood the subject from all angles. And this is where I've shared the story where I told my teacher in school, well, how about this? How about that? And he just finally blurted. He got tired of the secondary and all the other questions that followed the initial one. He says, look, I don't even believe it, but I got to teach it. And some people are happy to accept that teaching and go with the system. It doesn't disturb their life. They're socially accepted, like you said. But I was like chocolate and like the rest of you, always questioning things.
Yeah, the school system is run for the teaching staff, the employees, not the children. The process is designed to produce good worker bees. And the process is a process of comprehension. That's why they call it a comprehensive school. You're not there to question, you're there to comprehend. Now, I figured that out pretty early on in my school career and was the rebellious child that went through quite a number of schools as a result. But what I pretty much figured out immediately is, so all you want me to do is be able to parrot this back to you verbatim. Yeah. Easy. I got good grades. I was never there. But that's all you need to do. Be able to parrot back whatever they've put in front of you. Doesn't matter if you believe it. Doesn't matter if you understand it. Doesn't matter if any of those things are met. All you need to do is, if we say X and we ask you, is this X? You need to answer X. If you can do that, you'll pass the test. Okay? That's easy enough to do. But yeah, it's a very different way of looking at things, you know, having an education with the trivium, having a decent understanding of logic. Those things aren't taught to school kids. School kids in a comprehensive school aren't taught logic. Not at all. They're also not taught how to do primary source research. They're not really taught beyond 5th grade what the scientific method is. It juxtaposes into just so stories and religious rhetoric in the science classes. So, you know, I see the comprehensive education system in the Western world as woefully lacking. However, we have a very productive world now, don't we? And the schools produce very productive worker bees. So, maybe that's necessary for the world that we live in to be the world we live in, and we'd all hate it if it wasn't the case and we just had a lot of thinkers instead of a lot of workers. But there we go. That's my take on the comprehensive education system. Don't speak very highly of it.
Also, I would add that illogic is taught on top of not teaching logic.
Yeah, what you're saying is some of the tools that they apply when giving you the just so stories employ fallacy, as opposed to teaching logical fallacy or illogical statements. They'll teach you a statement that's based on a logical fallacy. Yeah, correct.
Oh, I thought you meant illogic. Like, yo, that shit is ill.
Like sick, man. A sick logic, that right there, bruv. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container? We can move on to a flat Earth related subject rather than an educational one, although it is related.
If we had a more thinker society, wouldn't we have more entrepreneurs and less worker bees? You know, I don't know if this is off topic. Stop me if it is, but I feel like we would be more entrepreneurs creating things instead of just following. If we were more thinkers, you know.
Well, they don't want that though, do they? Otherwise they'd let the, what do they call them now? Developing countries, formerly third world countries. They'd let them develop. And when they do, you see China or Taiwan or wherever else, Eastern countries, and they develop quickly. So, you know, a lot of the governments will try and keep underdeveloped countries underdeveloped. You know, they'll give them recycling tasks to do with, what do they call it? BART or something like that. And they just get them rooting their way through recycling rather than moving into textiles and developing as a country. They don't want that. Now, I don't know why they don't want that. I would assume that it threatens them, threatens their control. So, suppress them all, right, if you're in control. I don't know, I'm just speculating. I don't know why. Control's obviously required by someone, and who's going to be that someone? Well, whoever's in control. And I don't think it's the people we think it is.
I think you're hitting a good point here, because obviously if there was true freedom in all the habited places, underdeveloped countries to developed countries, so it was true freedom, then no one would have a control feature on the whole thing. And you could see just through the headlines and through the things that are going on in the world that everybody's fighting for control, starting with municipal governments to counties, then to state, then to, you know, like in the States here, federal. And then you look at a place like France and see what the kind of controls they're trying to put there on people, and the people are revolting, or England, Australia, you know, all these different places. People are just held tight, and the parameters are tight, because they know if we experience true freedom, they lose everything.
Or if we appreciated our own existentialism, which is suppressed and replaced with nihilism in the heliocentric model. So, you know, an appreciation of one's own true freedom is kind of what I was describing when I was saying the youth-like joy at not knowing what the sky is. Well, that is a type of freedom. It's just a freedom some people don't want.
Yeah, because that'd be cast aside some society. You won't get the high-paying jobs because you got to, you know, they put, I mean, it's happening now. Unless you do this, you can't come in. You need to wear this or you can't come in. You need to take this or we can't let you in. And this is where it's going.
which is all control. It's the same. It's on the same subject because it's all about control. And giving more developed countries a education that's structured around becoming a worker is advantageous in that developed country because you're going to have a certain amount of people who, with the opportunity to experience logical thinking. Not all of the comprehensive kids are going to turn out the way that is hoped because of their wiring in the first instance. There's many people that are just logical thinkers regardless of a forced comprehensive education.
And this thing is not being treated the same throughout the earth. Different places are treating their people accordingly to, like, if you accept these, like Canada, I think the majority accepts it, so they're pushing it harder. Now here in the United States, we're starting to get sick of this crap, so they're starting to give us some leeway in certain states. And I don't know how it's doing over there in the UK, but I know that they're definitely fine-tuning their control, because according to what you're going to do, like if you're going to give in real easy, then they're just going to stick it to you. If you resist,
I'd describe the
then they back
situation
off.
I describe Brit's attitude. I have discussed this a lot with people because it's not contentious. It won't get you daggers from them immediately. Most people are willing to talk about this. We don't have to mention it, by the way. I'd prefer we didn't, just in case. But we all know what we're talking about. Most people have got what I would call a passive indifference here in the UK. So, they'll do what they need to do to not get any hassle, regardless of whether or not they agree with it. And if questioned, they'll happily tell you about the bitter taste that they've got left in their mouth as a result of it, but while still conforming to a certain degree. Because a lot of the stuff that people are fussy about, you could actually just get away with just doing it, and it would only actually interfere with your life for about a couple of minutes a day at best, maybe a little bit more, but you know what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily have to have a massive impact on your life. It's all about your perspective on life. Oh, well, they're restricting me. Well, are they? Yeah, not really. Now, when it comes down to travel and things, that's a different story. But that's always been the case anyway. We've always had to have passports. We've always had to have checks. We've always had to go through a few hoops and potentially have a few jabs. I've had to do it myself when I was a rep to get into the Far East and various other places. I had to get a load of jabs. Did I want them? No. I had to. Now, that is already the world we live in. Now, it's been ramped up a stage, but for us, we're not going to rebel against it. And it doesn't surprise me that the Americans, who are much more quick to temper in that regard, they will actually overtly demonstrate their disagreement with it. They'll let everyone know. Not that we don't do that to a lesser degree here, but it's far more prevalent, I would say, in the States. People will, they'll be out in the streets telling you how much they don't approve of something if they don't approve of something, right?
Well, it's taken a turn to where the government and the entities that are connected to it are passing the buck to the corporations. And now these chain stores or businesses are going to be used to say, we will not serve you unless. And so this way, they're kind of left out of it. And it's a different way of adding that pressure. So it's a unique trick that they got now because they're all in cahoots anyway to begin with. So whether it's the NBA or MLB baseball, you can't come into the stadium without something, or you can't come in this store and buy something without something. And so you say, well, it's not the government telling you, it's the store, and they got the right to refuse service to anyone. And so it's funny how some stores put a sign, the opposite. If you have it, you can't come in. We want people only coming to our store who don't have it. So some stores have caught on. And so the independent contractors are using that same game against them here. It's good.
Like in the Godfather, when there's a guy who's basically become a rat and he's selling out to a certain extent the family, and the judge is asking him if there was ever any direct contact between, I won't describe what, but the criminal and the Al Pacino character. And the guy's like, no, there's always a guy. He's like, what do you mean, like a middleman? He's like, yeah, a guy. He's like, did he have many guys? And he was like, yeah, he had a lot of guys. And that's all.
No, buffer.
A buffer. That's it. A buffer. That's the one. Yeah, he had a lot of buffers. Yeah, a lot of buffers. Right. Well, that's what the corporates are. So you don't get the people to mandatorily do anything. You say, well, you can't do this because we've introduced a regulation for the corporates who will absolutely do it in a heartbeat. And you're subject to them. Or you go elsewhere. But the other people have also got the same regs. You know, they're going to have to comply eventually anyway. So just do it. But they're not directly telling you that. As you say, they've got a lot of buffers.
The funny thing with that is it was the senator that said it, because he kept saying that he basically never talked to him. So the guy's like, so you had a middleman, like a buffer. Yeah, the Corleone family had a lot of buffers.
Yeah, that gets a chuckle. We haven't done all the housekeeping question. Over 100 people watching, we're still not through housekeeping. Gas pressure without a container. We did cover it in discussion, but any evidence thereof, considering there's a suggestion that someone's going to come in with evidence from space.
A simple enough question. But we just haven't seen anyone come in on the heliocentric side and tell us how they can demonstrate this.
Yeah, but could it be different higher, like they say? Like, how do we know actually? Maybe if we do go higher, things would be different.
No. Gas laws don't change. They're natural laws. If that was the case, they wouldn't be laws anymore.
Is gravity a law?
No.
Someone asked me that. That's why I'm asking.
No.
In their definition, it actually is.
So what I said was it's not a law
Nathan.
in the way like thermodynamics is a law. It's a behavior that we can see.
Be a law. It's got to be inviolable and
Natural
applicable
law.
always. It's got to be actually applicable. I don't know if I think it was yourself that we covered this earlier. So if you're going to assert that mass attracts mass always, then mass has got to attract mass always, not never. In the case of gas, it repels. Two gas particles collide, what happens? Do they stick together? Well, they do in gravitational accretion now, don't they? But in reality, there's elastic collisions. So it's not a law. Newton's law of gravity is out of date by 106 years. Been replaced by bending of space-time.
So I just posted it, right? What are the three laws of nature? Science includes many principles at least once thought to be laws of nature. Newton's laws of gravitation, his three laws of motion, and the ideal gas laws. See how they put gravitation in there?
So then you have to define it. So does it define what that means?
Not in that statement, but then, you have to.
Okay, well, I'll do it
Riley
for them.
points out, Nathan, it's Newton's law of gravitation, not a natural law of gravitation.
Correct.
But see how they throw it in there. That's what I'm saying. They literally put it in with the gas laws,
Yeah, and I
and
can
they
take
actually
it back out
name
again.
it first.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
And
but they're saying
sure,
Newton's
sure.
law, not natural law.
But I can take it back out again. So if the assertion, that's why I asked you to define it, and it doesn't in your citation, which is a bit poor, but I can. So which one are we talking about? Newton's law? 106 years out of date, superseded by bending of conceptual mediums known as pseudo-Riemannian force space. Length, breadth, depth, and time. That's current gravity. If you want to talk about the law of gravity, 106 years out of date, mass attracts mass. Gas doesn't do that. We just covered this. Yeah, they can say what they like. They call Cavendish an experiment. It isn't. They call Newton's descriptions laws. They're not. Doesn't mean that actual laws are suddenly invalid because somebody's made something up and called it a law and it's been proven wrong. It just means that that which was proven wrong, in this case gravity, is no longer a law. Never was a law. But that's what makes laws laws. They're inviolable.
Well, since you say that, then the second law of thermodynamics 106 years from now cannot change to anything.
No. Entropy is absolute. It's never going to change. That process of entropy increase is absolute. We're going to violate the second law of thermodynamics, but that's what the sky vacuum is. Now, some of the fundies will say, well, that proves what? The second law of thermodynamics wrong? Wouldn't be a law anymore, then, would it? It's just your fundy sky vacuum belief that you can't visit and is claimed to be taking place on a stage, on high wire, and then claimed to be a light that you can see in the sky, which is claimed to be in a vacuum. No, because it's in violation of natural law. The gas we breathe would fill the space. It's called an entropy increase. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating, molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Only if you have a blue screen behind it and imagine it. Hey, Virus, why don't you come and tell us what entropy is instead of hiding in chat?
We know what entropy is. We don't need Virus to tell us.
No, I know, but he's there acting all bold and saying nonsense.
Oh, I don't care about the peanut gallery. You mean the actual live chat? I mean,
yeah.
Subscribe today. Smash the super chat.
Well, if it's the peanut gallery, then I can understand why he's nuts.
Indeed. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
What is gravity?
Currently bending pseudo force space.
I thought it was weight. Gravitas didn't it mean weight?
Yeah, as I let go of a helium balloon and watch it ascend. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
We're still waiting for that one, aren't we?
Harp?
I want to digress just for a second. I was trying to get on. I've been asking a new question because all the globers are starting to infer, weight is a force, right? Well, then I asked the question, what's the cause of weight? What's the cause of it? And then they have to kind of go through and try to circle their way around to define the cause of it. That's even asking the question, what's the cause of gravity? So they have to go back to that same question, because if it's a phenomenon, weight, you can argue weight is a phenomenon because you can see it on a scale, you can see it, you can feel it when you pick up something. So what's the cause of it? Then they have to go through and define and figure out what that is at that point.
And then I hand you 500 helium balloons and it takes you.
Correct.
I wouldn't put weight
and
like
also
a phenomenon. It's a convention.
Yeah, aren't we all matter?
You may see some of the effects of what we call weight as phenomena, displacement, for example, and stuff, washing. But weight itself is just a convention.
Indeed, and it's got certain limitations, right? Which is why you wouldn't use the convention for gas, for example.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's so good. Its convention doesn't allow us to even describe gas as weight.
I mean,
My citation
Paul
came from Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Isn't that strange? Philosophers.
I just heard the end part about isn't it strange, and then philosophers. Do you want to repeat yourself again?
Yeah, that little citation I threw at you came from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Came from philosophers of science and metaphysicians.
I see. Burn them all at the stake.
What does that mean?
Because they're philosophers.
Right. Not science.
Yeah, like most people with a PhD.
It
And
means
what's
you
metaphysics
you
again?
had an opinion.
What does
You
PhD
need
stand
What's
for?
metaphysics
philosophy
again?
to develop the rules for science, don't you?
What's PhD stand for, Adam?
Doctor of Philosophy.
Right. Can you give me some examples of fields that you'd get a PhD in, please, Adam?
Medicine,
There you go.
pharmacy, astrophysics.
Don't decry all philosophy. Just identify it for what it is. Now, when it comes to things like astrophysicists, they'll juxtapose their philosophy and replace it with the word science as a magic trick. That's where we have an issue. Now, if they weren't to have done that, and they weren't have to asserted a reification fallacy in the form of their understanding of a way of describing the movement of the heavens, that's what heliocentrism is, and they presented it merely as a philosophy, a way of understanding or calculating these things that works quite well, then I'm sure everyone would accept it at face value as an interesting way of looking at things, and an interesting way of calculating the movements of the stars, and an interesting and whimsical way of seeing your world, where you could take a very nihilistic outlook and bow to the sun. However, that's not what they present it as. They present it as science, whether you like it or not. Right, correct, absolute. And it's not. It's merely philosophy. Merely a religious belief when punted in the manner it has been.
Well, and actually along those same lines, this is another thing I've been doing, even in the Discord, is I've been asking a question like, is space-time material or immaterial? Or like when they even describe in magnetism, I was like, well, what is it? You can say, well, it's interaction of electrons. Well, what happens if there's a vacuum? Is that thing is a physical thing that's reaching out through the vacuum to grab another electron? They go into trying to explain. I was like, well, what is it? And then they go back into describing, well, this is what we see interacting. Well, that doesn't describe what it is. So you're saying something that you can't describe physically in a physical term. So you're back into the metaphysics. So you're back into philosophy.
Precisely.
Philosophizing what you think this thing is.
And they do exactly the same thing with the sun. We did it. Not me personally, but some of the panelists did it a couple of days ago. So you say, what is the sun? And they say, well, what the sun is, and then describe what you experience of the sun. And then say, well, that's what the sun is. And you go, well, yeah, you're just stating the bleeding obvious based on your experience of it. But you haven't got anything tangible to describe it. You haven't got any testable information. Nothing that you can qualify. So what have you actually got? Well, nothing. Precisely dick. You don't know. But you can describe it all day long, right? But in that instance, at least you've got something to describe.
Right. I mean, like even when they start talking about like space-time, the gravitational force or the mass attracts mass. Well, they start arguing now. I want to go after them and say, look, you said mass attracts mass. Well, even for an acceleration to occur everywhere in nature that I've experienced it most of the time, there is something physical interacting with something else physical. So there's, my pushing down of the pedal, but it's the acceleration of the engine that's causing the thing to go. But you've got this non-physical thing called space-time causing things to accelerate. How is that possible? Yeah, you can describe it with geodesics, but that still doesn't explain there has to be some kind of physical interaction. And I think Newton knew that. That's why he said, don't do this to me. There has to be something reaching out there, grabbing it and causing this thing to happen. I think Newton understood it.
Say it again, Adam, if you're correct. Go ahead.
So that's where it is possible, and the only place it occurs, it's in the mathematics. That's where that force exerts itself in the maths. It's where the dimension exists in the maths, but it doesn't exist in science at all.
It doesn't exist in physics, in the physical.
Yeah, I meant within any bit of science, that's not something that is manipulated or controlled. It's not even tangible, is it? Could I have a bag of space-time? Or 2 bags? Or 3 hours of space-time?
This not, but this non-thing that you can't give me or measure with anything. Well, I guess I can't say measure. They say they measure it. This thing that you cannot grasp and hold up, look at, or see has the ability to move things.
No.
It has the ability to cause things to move and accelerate.
No. You can think of it as a force.
Nathan, I got a slide the master B that on the subject.
Yep. 10th.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm off, so you can read it if you like.
Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. It's Nikola Tesla.
Reminds me of rumpus. It only exists in the maths.
But it's the final bit, isn't it? That they've done this stuff and it's validated, it's solid. Yeah, everything balances in the equations, but unfortunately, the structure has no relation to reality, and that's what space-time is. It's got no relation to reality whatsoever.
Yeah, and you can parallel it with what we discussed earlier with the ISS. They build a construct or set with wires, and it eventually will be described as that light in the sky, but it bears no semblance of comparison to what you see in the sky. It's just a construct they've created. Give you an explanation for the light in the sky. They say it is the light in the sky, but it bears no relation to it.
Well, and even their own mathematics, they say they have mathematics to describe Newton's laws of motion, right? Well, general relativity, special relativity kind of debunk Newton, but Einstein's theory of relativity can be described mathematically. But then you got quantum mechanics, which debunks the other two, but even it's described mathematically. So it's like the mathematics don't line up. They don't, and it's obviously reality. Things happen, things move, things fall, things seem to do things in the sky. All those things are occurring. We can't deny that they are, but all the things they use to describe it don't line up.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. In the same way you wouldn't throw out the photoelectric effect. You don't throw out quantum mechanics simply because lots of people have mathsed it and also used it as a magic trick to grease the skids of their own just so stories. Now, quantum mechanics with scientific validity, you can take the science of it and leave all the rest. The maths you can leave, you don't need it. But you're right, it's debunking Einstein, right? That's why Einstein kicked up such a fuss about it, because it was debunking him. Now, that's already changed. In mainstream science, the peer-reviewed bit, the bit in quote marks, they already know all this, right? Quantum is already part of the current science. So, for the most part, modern science has reached, breached, and exceeded Einstein's limitations a long time ago, right? Now, that will have to trickle its way down to the general populace eventually. Now, don't get me wrong, it's taken 106 years to get to the point where we can say, yeah, unfortunately, Newton nonsense is superseded by Einstein nonsense, which is superseded by quantum mechanics. But, Paul, I estimate we'll be able to make that statement to a fundy. It's been a nice day without any fundies, by the way. This is lovely. This is my kind of show, by the way. I've had a lovely show today. Anyway, I reckon it'll be 2030 before we can actually make that assertion. Yeah, so you understand that when you say gravity... Go on, Adam.
Will that be before or after recognition of the black swan, then?
The problem with that... Chocolate saying, if he was here, I'd give him props for this, but to understand the black swan is to relinquish your geometric heliocentric assertion, right? So somebody said they can't ever understand the black swan. Now, the most recent example was Gem Panda or someone similar saying, well, he's higher. At a fundamental level, not even understanding the words in the modus solens when it literally says observer's height and feet. They're just hand-waving it. Because they can't. For a brief fleeting moment, if you're not sub 70 IQ, you recognise the significance, even if you don't necessarily process it in your front part of your brain. At some unconscious level, if you're not a complete drongo, you see it and you recognise the implications of it, and then you keep well away from it. To the point where you'll say, well, this debunks it because of the height. You know, something nonsensical. Because you've got to deny with that. If you want to retain a sphere belief, you can't if you understand and appreciate the argument, because at best you've debunked the radius of the fundamental premise of your sphere belief, in other words.
So you are saying then there's more chance of them rejecting Einstein and accepting quantum than Black Swan then, technically.
Even with their own side telling them that it's superseded. And I quote, literally, it's not a force, end quote, George Musa directed to a fundamentalist religious zealot with a bold belief who wants gravity to be a force. You know, even with their own side telling them, they don't want to relinquish it. You know, the trenches are a funny place. Now, for you're a common man, I don't think they give a crap either way. They just think gravity's a force because they were told at school, and they don't give it any further thought. And there's a handful of them, like Chocolate and me, who swung a bucket round and went, what? We're full of water going, what? Not understanding centrifugal forces or centripetal forces. Just been told that gravity holds the water on. You know, in a very dumbed down, nonsensical, 106-year out-of-date way. You just go, what? Most people just go, oh, okay, whatever, if you say so.
I always remember. But, sir, that's the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah, the bucket would fly off the outside edge of it, though. Write it down on your textbook. Repeat it when the test comes. That's all you got to do. Don't need to ask questions about it. Doesn't matter if what I show you is in complete contradiction of what I've said. Write it down as I've said it. Repeat it when asked. Easy. Then you'll be a good worker bee.
That brings up another good point, Nathan. You can understand the concept completely. Like, I get this all the time in Discord. You just, it's typical rumpus thing. You just don't understand. You can completely understand something and not think it's true or not believe it's true. So just saying you don't understand is not a good argument, because you can pass a test, like you said, comprehensively. I can go through physics class comprehensively, pass everything, ace the whole thing. I realize a lot of this is not right. Along the way.
Most flat earthers understand heliocentric theory better than most ballers.
I'd
Doesn't
agree.
mean we accept it, does it? We do, as this show demonstrates, we actually have a much better understanding of their model than they tend to do themselves.
It's, for example, you could learn, it's the Star Wars language. Is it Tatooine or something like that? You could learn that language. Or the anatomy of a unicorn. You go through, if such a thing existed, hypothetically speaking, books that have detailed anatomy of a unicorn, right down to the horn. Well, they're within 5% of horses anyway, so you could get a detailed understanding of what unicorns are like. And then you could be put to test on unicorn, specifically, anatomy, and ace the test. And at the end, they go, right, you've done really well, so obviously, you're one of the people who believes in unicorns then. And you go, no, you're joking. Right? Of course not. Yeah, but you've just passed the test detailing how unicorn anatomy is real. No, I demonstrated my comprehension of unicorn anatomy. Doesn't mean I believe it's real. Logically, that's nonsense. That's what they do. Or they'll hold it up in false dichotomy. How does your flat earth work with the seasons? I didn't make a claim about how earth works with the seasons. I don't even know what the sun is. Why are you holding this up? Well, because I'm going to be burning it in a minute. Your model says they do blah, 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 blah. And my model says it does blah, 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 blah. And blah, 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 blah is far more accurate. Therefore, Earth's a sphere.
Of course, because it works, Nathan.
It works, implying physicality. What does work mean? Doing something. Yeah, models don't do work.
I always think about that thought I always posted it back, I think, a couple of years ago, and it's from their own sources. It says you have a model when it says that there's limitations on your hypothesis. Okay, why would there be limitations on your hypothesis? Which means you don't fully understand or fully grasp, or something's missing, or you don't have all the data. Something is wrong. So the only thing you have left is to create a model. And that's why models are easy to debunk, because they don't fully describe reality, and they can't, and they never will. Because to fully describe reality, you have to have all knowledge of all existence to be able to have a model that would match reality. And basically that model would become reality, you know, at that point.
No. And when they're asserted as being scientific validation, they become pseudoscience. The cause and effect being validated when you make a model and then say that's your world. Why? Well, because there's a correlation between what I assert is a model I've created, a philosophy I adhere to, a religious belief I punt, and the world we actually experience. The model works. No, it doesn't. It doesn't do any work. For example, we don't have a geometric horizon. Something you can draw a tangent to, measure dip angles with, and assert gets in the way of things. You know, those things that you'd require in geometry, like a straight line, you don't have those in reality. So you can't assert physical geometry. You know, like liars, namely the rumpus who's in my chat right now, would assert when doing their geometry and drawing straight lines that they don't actually have in reality. You know, their model, they say, works with a tangent they don't have. So it doesn't work. And you'd have to lie about it when you called on it. You haven't got tangent points in geometry anymore. Silly, silly billies. That only exists in your maths. It doesn't work. You're being worked.
Well, here's another thing.
Go on.
Here's another thing that's come up. I heard one of the Globers say, you really fully can't understand cause and effect, ultimately. I mean, I guess I'm paraphrasing it probably pretty bad, but I thought to myself, I was like, wait a minute, so what's the point of science? If you can't fully elucidate or come to terms with what the cause and effect is, you know, maybe because you don't understand, you know, potentially all the causes of all effects, why do you do science to begin with? Because if you can't trace it back ultimately to a single cause or a specific cause, but there's always potentially some other cause or something, then what's the point?
That's what science does.
So, Paul, let me get this.
That's what
Paul, let me
science
get
does.
this.
Science elucidates the cause of an effect you observe in nature, otherwise known as a phenomena. Cause and effect is what science deals in.
But I mean, they're shooting my point is they're shooting themselves in the foot. Because if you say you can't elucidate the cause of an effect, ultimately the ultimate cause of an effect, then what's the point?
I see. To paraphrase, when they assert what is called science by them, they are actually utilizing pseudoscience. And pseudoscience doesn't deal in causal relationships you can validate with experiments. Ascertaining the cause of an effect you've observed, that's not what their science, actually pseudoscience, does. So their science, actually pseudoscience, doesn't prove things. It's open to interpretation and changing when something's proven to be completely invalidated. Then you can change your just so story if it's not based on cause and effect relationships that have been validated by experiment empirically. You can change them at will if it's pseudoscience. We just call it science because it's magic. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
what a lovely day!